my goal is that we get clips here that we can show, we do it before, we build it out, and then we do a presentation like the extreme makeover home edition, right? And then I think people will get that. And my real goal is that I want meetings to be like this too, where we just have a continuous feed of meetings and we could tell people, hey, we don't have to post it, but hopefully we can post a lot of these or at least a few of these, because then we can show people this is what it is, right? Do you want to have a meeting like this? And we invite that person to this podcast. And even if we record it, we'll just say, hey, you can have the whole recording, the transcript, and then the code we produce. Do you want to do this session and see if this is something you want to sign up for? Doing every week.
So I want to show you guys 2 examples, and maybe this will make it into the clips. But Keith, I do like the extreme home makeover like metaphor.
I hate it, but it's accurate.
Yeah, it's close. And I don't think this is better, but I know I kind of showed this previously. I think, gosh, Keith, maybe it was when we were talking to Jake Taylor from Jump Cloud. But Nelson, I wanted to just put this up again and say, like, I think what we're actually trying to foster is more like the creative relationship between a music producer and an artist or a creative. And in our case, it's just entrepreneurs. And we're like business producers. We're business designers. It's not about the software. Like, the software has become the easiest fucking part of every project we've done. The hard part is business model, pricing, customer research, customer experience, go to market, distribution, competitive nature, and so I think what we're doing with the studio, I showed this example. It's kind of funny. I don't know if the audio is going to come through.
I was like, we're going to just send to Rick Rubin real quick.
Right. So like Rick Rubin has 0 musical technical talent whatsoever, but he gave Jay-Z that idea, and Jay-Z has the capacity to like execute it. And so I think what was misinterpreted, Keith, whenever I said that like it's like this, is that it's easy to think that we're our Rick Rubins. It really is easy to say like we are creative tastemakers, but I actually think we're in the opposite seats. Like, oftentimes we're inviting entrepreneurs that are creative tastemakers or innovators. They lack the ability to lock down their ideas. They have little to no technical acumen, but they have something that has inspired them to bring something to market. And they come to us who have technical talent and can perform and execute and, create compliant systems. And then we go and fucking lay down some sick beats and have a great time, right? And make money together. And so I think that was one thing I wanted to like clear up from like the way I was thinking about the metaphor is like, I'm not fucking Rick Rubin, but I do love people who bring creative ideas to me, who is also a creative, but has partnered with technologists like yourself to execute it.
Yeah, I would also say that we are still in a lot of ways Rick Rubin. Where like Rick Rubin's really just good at I've read his book, and so like I didn't think it was ever going to come in handy, but it's getting there. But he very much thinks of himself how you're describing us right now, right? Where he's the guy that has the parties, he's the guys that get that knows how to get the right people in the room that are going to come up with the ideas. Like it's the right. I think he calls it like a potion. I mean, he just uses a lot of crazy metaphors.
Yeah, he talks a lot about alchemy and these kind of different things, right?
I feel like I spend my whole life in tech of just like, I grew up very much with the mindset of like, you got to get up at 5 and work hard to do shit. And like, I still have that, and it's balancing that with that mindset of just like, maybe if I'm just in the right room for an hour.
Right. No, and it was funny.
That's what's weird.
Whenever I struggle with getting anything unblocked or processed or done, I found the pattern has been when I let go and I'm like, you know what? I am just gonna disconnect and enjoy whatever, or do the fun project so that I can get to the crappy stuff. So yeah, having that kind of balance, it's a tricky, yeah, it's a good thing to pay attention to what inspires you.
Yeah. So, one example of this, right? Like just even happened last week was I was watching the World Cup. I was feeling very creative and just restless. And so I started making that mundial.buzz website because I had read that Twitter had, released a new real-time API. In that low effort, low cognitive lift, my girlfriend, my dogs are around. I'm just having fun talking about Twitter and X and the World Cup and trends and just thinking, well, then stand that side up, get familiar with how to use the new X API and the kind of the shape of it through project based learning, really. And then, sitting with Keith and I was like, well, what if I, actually use that capability on something like the exchange.tech, which I stood up for a client the following week. Well, now the exchange.tech can post to Twitter and drive traffic to the site, right? So by doing something creative and fun and a really weird project for real time, I could do a much simpler, much more, business efficient and, kind of solve on the other side. I find this happens every day. I'm like, oh, I did that here. It's applicable there. Well, if it's applicable there, well, where could it go next? Like those connections are always kind of firing for me.
I think that the collaborative nature of this is what's valuable, because just like it happened for you while sitting on your couch, now you're like zoned in front of your computer for a few hours. Versus where, as soon as, I mean, we've seen this with Sprint talk around get it out of the building, and because that's when you start to see it's if it has legs and if it's
Well, tell
gonna.
people more about that. I know what you're saying,
Yeah,
but I do
yeah,
think that get it out of the building is exactly what I'm talking
yeah,
about. Yeah,
get it
that's
out of your
perfect.
head like just advance it so that it has resistance to say, oh yeah, this is valid idea, people want this, or this is the way it should look or feel or work. So the design and just the existence of it gets tested. As soon as you say it out loud, you're going to sound, oh, this is way off.
Yeah, why don't people like that? Yeah.
Yeah, why don't they like my idea? I've been sitting on this for 2 weeks and blah blah blah. And so being somebody that can think about that and overthink myself into not submitting anything or sharing anything, it's part of that. And so the opposite is true, where well, the value of that is, yeah, let's give it its proper incubation so that it could, right, I mean, this is why you have incubators, so that it could grow properly, or if see if it has there's a need, there's a product market fit, right? And if it's, and then we bring all these innovation frameworks and tools, you apply them at the right times, you'll get the right one out of the building, right? There's going to be that one golden child, the one out of the 10 that make it out there. So I think it's a collaborative nature, because it's now that we live in a world where, yes, software is cheap, right? It's a fraction of the time that it takes to do something. So much has been commoditized that, yeah, anybody with a fart of an idea can go out and make something, and which is the beauty and the danger, right? The double-edged sword of AI technology. That I won't get into that, but yeah, if it's somebody has the wrong intentions, they can also make an efficient solution to executing that intention. And so, yeah, being able to have that experience together. Okay, we know how to get things out of our heads, get things out of somebody else's head, a client, ourselves, and put it into production and apply it, and then come back to see again iteratively. Is this what people want? Is this useful? Adoption, right? Adoption is like the big X factor in all of this.
Man, and that's why I keep coming back to producers. I'm like, artists sit around and make art all day. There are
Mm.
amazing musicians on 16th Street in Denver, Broadway in Nashville, name your street in New York City that never
Subway,
get found, never get
you're on the subway.
distributed.
Yeah.
Producers come in, tap into the zeitgeist, tap into marketing, tap into data and analytics, and call a shot. And so, we've always talked about like, well, what are we now if we're not coders, we're not developers? I do think engineers is the most relevant term still today, even though the engineering work is shifting. But software producers might be actually a great way to differentiate against the noise of like all the builders that are racing to the bottom. Like we get involved in business model. We're writing terms and conditions, privacy policies, consulting with attorneys. We're doing governance. I mean, like we're involved in way more than just the technology, like the moment, the code gets deployed, way more. Right. And so just a seed of an idea to talk more about, right? I think of like, how do we make environments where software basically just comes out of the ground like a spring? Like we see that vision coming. We just know it's not going to do it to itself yet. Like there's still somebody punching a hole, to get it out of the ground. But so maybe if we kind of pause there on some of the talk about like the bigger picture, can we kind of pick a topic and record the next 15 minutes or so of a transcript so that we can come back tomorrow and talk about some prototypes or some ideas?
Yeah, I guess the criteria is, how well, if there is a criteria, but I do have a few more of the continuation of the things that we talked about. The supermarket initiative is one. The criteria that I keep, the question that I ask myself is, well, do we have enough understanding of the problem? Right? My pattern is, if I have a conversation with a friend or a colleague and they're telling me about their business and their ideas, it's like, oh, I'm already thinking. And so having done that a few times, there's a handful of projects for a few of them that I think could be good, like a learning system, or how do we keep alumni from a cohort, better engaged than what's already out there. So the supermarket initiative, CRMs, what's missing out of a super easy CRM?
Yeah. So maybe I like kind of focusing on the supermarket initiative because we do have some assets we could start with,
Okay.
talk through audibly, and then we can take this transcript and then we could execute on them. So I'm like, just give us the brief on like, why do you care about this?
Yeah, no, I care about this. It came from a sense of the marketing for local supermarkets a little bit more, to be more powerful, and that it came out of that idea of, and then it stemmed out of, well, what are the main challenges that a supermarket owner has, and it's keeping the shelves full. And so that's sort of how that snowballed, and I sort of embodied the persona of a local supermarket owner, and it's like, what are their needs? They're managing inventory and keeping costs, keeping the shelves full. And so this came out of the idea of the full shelf initiative to come up with a more sustainable way to keep those shelves full with minimizing waste. I think understanding that problem around keeping inventory clean, keeping inventory well stocked, and also understanding what the costs are and the waste. So it really comes down to, how do we help these local food providers survive?
Yeah, so let's kind of build on a couple of the ideas that you had shared. I don't know if you recall, but I had made these videos just as like a way to encapsulate plausible, a preferable, and a probable future, right? Where if these problems continue, but we actually address them, what could they look like? So I think the first plausible one that had come out of the write up and what you had shared was this neighborhood OS. That's one idea where a store really stops selling food efficiently, but it's about helping households make good decisions. And so you can see how the store, in this kind of example, what's amazing is I made these with Claude Design so quickly, right? To kind of capture, okay, the household's always debating these reoccurring choices. There's always like, what do we use? What do we have? What do we need? What's getting more expensive? And then you've got all the like loyalty, rewards, credit cards, delivery services, smart carts. Like, you have an ecosystem at the store that's already existing, but disconnected. And really all they do is act as like warehouses that people come in and buy from. Right. And so instead, like, can the store or the grocery and supermarket give you the signals you need to make good choices was one idea. And then that also obviously helps them move inventory, right? So then this other one here, I think this was the possible. This is like, oh, wow, if this gets better, what could it really look like? And so this is, I think, the part that everybody's kind of there's a lot of fear around this subject because of algorithmic pricing, right? Like charging Keith a different price for Campbell's soup than Nelson is a different price for Campbell's soup. But if you can regulate away algorithmic pricing and kind of these asymmetrical pricing strategies, and you get the benefit of the grocery store actually knowing who is buying, well, the local government, community orgs, schools, healthcare agencies can all benefit from that kind of data. But I think there's huge barriers between surveillance and support was the main issue here, right? Like this is possible, but I'm very skeptical you're going to get to a point where the store data is so readily available to the whole ecosystem just because of political, infighting. But I think what's interesting here is like, what will the family actually want is really hard, right? So all these programs of like, well, we can give all this food goes bad. Like why are we throwing out good things? I think it's something like 20% of the stuff in store shelves just gets thrown away, right? Because it never gets bought on time. And so I think it's even higher now. I forget. There was like research from Too Good to Go
Well,
that I saw.
yeah, this is gonna be my point too, is like that a lot of these, I know HEB does this, they have like a food bank where they basically donate the food, right,
Mhm.
afterwards, but I don't know, I worked at a food bank a lot in high school, and, like, the biggest problem, and I know they're still having this at food banks, I've done one recently, like, you have to check the expiration dates on them because you can't give out expired food, there's, like, a lot of rules around things like
Mhm.
that, you can't give out, like, I mean, you can't be giving out, like, eggs. I mean, some places do, but, like, there's things like that that are tough. But anyway, one necessary part of that, though, is that they are writing off those donations on their taxes. So I feel like that data would be a little bit easier to get, at least bulk donation data, and that most likely, if it's not a like, they're all huge corporations, I know, but I know that there's also smaller food banks through, like, churches and, you know, like, Mobile Loaves and Fishes, like, those types of, like, organizations. And I feel like they are probably not well represented with, like, Kroger. Like, there's no way Kroger builds technology with those people in mind at all. Like, I imagine there's
Yeah.
huge there has to be huge amounts of problems. Like, I know everything I did that I've ever done in a food bank could have been automated if they had just said,
Mhm.
"Here's what's coming."
Yeah. And I think what the reframe though is like the store to do things like this, right? Or the future of supermarkets as in this case, civic or community spaces. The key reframe that has to happen is the store is not an advertising platform, which today that's all it is, right? It's a distribution warehouse, but it has ads slapped all over it, on the products, on the
Yeah,
walls.
the whole
That's all it
place is
is.
an ad. Dude, and, like, when I took my business minor in college, the marketing class was I shit you not, most of it was just, like, this guy explaining store shelves and why they put them a certain way.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I think what I'd be interested in, whatever we prototype, of like, is the future of supermarkets a supportive community place? Like, what does it look when you take out a lot of the advertising incentive, which is something we're going to need to do to make sure we feed people equitably, at least from what I've heard. You have to remove the dependency on the retailer or the distributors, right? Creating the product who literally control the whole supply chain right now. Okay, so then lastly, and then we can kind of talk more about like what would we make? What do we prototype to kind of bring these things to life? This is, I think, the preferred one that I landed on after looking at Nelson's brief and kind of like, talking about this prior. I actually had produced a lot of maps for food deserts when I was working at the city of Austin. So like I totally get the issue. Economically, it's fucked up, right? Like the stores just can't, like HEB can't open a Del Val store yet, right? They're just not there. Or HEB can't open the store in Oklahoma that they need to get Oklahoma City fed. It's a weird model that just has razor thin, like 1% margins. So, how do they increase their revenue? I think is actually the biggest question, creating new business lines without extracting it from the community themselves. So even though like what people throw out there, you'll see here is like, I was trying to tongue in cheek say like everything is about extracting the workers or the customers. Everything. None of it is
Mhm.
about actually working with the businesses on the side of it to generate new revenue. It's just fascinating. So give the store to the humans
Yeah.
is the idea. Give them more to work with. How do we make it a sensory experiment? How do we make it more about like recall, education, guidance? So, if you think of like a docent at a museum, right? The docent at a museum comes in and says, what do you like? Right? What are you interested in learning about today? Like, oh, on the third floor, we've got this Descartes painting, right? Like you should go look at that if you're into Renaissance realism or, or whatever. Like, what if your cashiers or your like greeters at the store were actually doing that and were guides, nutritionists, experts, coaches, and so on? Giving back to the community was one fun, like, kind of idea that came out. And then, of course, automate the fuck out of it. Like, we want automated cash registers. Like, we do, you know, like, we don't want to have to like sit there while somebody procedurally and lazily swipes stuff,
Dude, have you guys been to
like,
a Walmart recently? Like, I mean,
I,
I don't like
I'm gonna rebuttal on that because I find I stay on the line without I skip the automated ones because they're much more efficient at doing so, especially when you got a toddler
that's
pulling on you.
true.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I've also found it. I think there's a phenomenon of like a labor transfer of like now the customer is doing part of the labor work, not just
mhm.
the employee. I think Bill Burr has a joke on that is like the sandwich, like, no, you make the whole sandwich. Like, no, no, you put the mustard and all that stuff. But anyway,
No,
it's that,
yeah,
that concept is happening with where either the customer's gonna do it or the employee's gonna do it. That's how the businesses think. But in the
Mhm.
idea of like the bringing in the human factor along, there's value in that little interaction of the regular cash register. But automation, yes, let's bring like that needs to be where else can we automate that we can't that we aren't already or like have like the option, right? To gain the control. Like right now, like I'm the type of customer that does aim for the regular traditional checkout line.
Mhm.
And I'll
Yeah.
wait there all day.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love that about you, Nelson. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I would try to run for office on the sole issue of this checkout
Yep.
line. It's ridiculous. Like it's not automation, it's extraction. Like the way they set it up is it's like I mean, when I say they, I mean I'm really thinking about Target, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest. But they don't value
Totally.
our time at all. Like
No.
if and that is the labor. I get paid for my time, the vast majority of other things I do, right? And I don't need to be valued at the same at the Target checkout line, but you're now taking money out of someone's pocket, put it back in yours because you don't want to pay the capital cost of fully automating this and getting
Yeah.
us out the fucking door.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's this
Or,
weird
or
in
take the
between.
risk. I'll say take the risk too. Like it could fuck up, but then like
No,
what
and
Target's too
you're
big.
absolutely right though, right? It's like it's this weird in between where we see automation coming. It has already happened, but it's creating a negative customer experience such that people reject and blame it on technology and capitalistic interest rather than actually benefiting from it. And so, I mean, if I think about what we could make, whenever we first sketched this out, the idea was like a scorecard that a supermarket could use to self assess themselves and then say, hey, I want to move to being more of a community support and a place that has positive brand equity in my community, which HEB does a phenomenal job at, right?
Well,
And
yeah,
so,
they have more
you
regular
know,
checkout.
if we were to make something that works for one store, one neighborhood, right? Like, don't get too ambitious and try to make it for a whole ecosystem, right? Can we solve one store, one retailer, one community? And this is where I'm like, I think we could sketch something out like this, right? Like we could make something that allows a retailer manager to say, yeah, here's where we are. And then maybe that could connect them to local government kickbacks and fee and lieu services that actually make it more effective. So, one example, at least when I was at the city of Austin, and why I think this is possible, is that if a grocery store installed bike racks, they would get a kickback on sidewalk improvements that were happening around the store. So not only can they make bikeable areas for people to come and gather and get groceries, but then it would pay for the sidewalk repairs that were happening around their store. Win-win. Everybody wins. There is literally no loser in that circumstance whatsoever because of the way the fee and lieu system was designed. Right. So that's just one.
Well,
I don't know what Denver does,
you're
but
certainly
it's pretty
speaking
sick.
like the roads support the bikers getting to this place at all.
But
But yes,
right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my biggest problem with my 4-year-old is she sprints at like bike racks when she sees them because they're always empty. She likes to run underneath them and she hits her head. But it's good someone's getting a kickback.
Right. And then also things like the amount of bike racks in the city and the amount of sidewalks repaired in the city directly tied to things like state and federal funding. Right. So like, Austin used that strategy to fix more sidewalks, right? As buildings built more bike racks, because if they didn't fix the sidewalks, the state was going to come in and take their whole street budget, which no city wants. So I don't know
Hmm.
what Denver has, right? Or like Orlando, like pick your neighborhood or pick your municipality and
Yeah.
we could just
Well,
like sketch it out,
In
you know?
Denver specifically, I think it does depend on the location. Like in Texas, I would probably play it where I'd go to HEB or a retailer first and try to do this. I would actually get the local, like a community org that works with the local government. There's all sorts of programs funding all sorts of things
Hmm.
related to food, right? And then you go get the retailer to say, hey, can you just give us this base amount of data? We got these two organizations fired up. Something that somebody could get you that just is like the
Yep.
manager of the store.
Yep. And so like what if the government and, the store had a shared view of data, say, hey, look, like the public sentiment around the Safeway off of 22nd is really low and falling, right? Like we could do social listening on Facebook, even by address, to know why is the public sentiment falling? Well, did 3 people break their ankle on the sidewalk? That's actually a city problem. That's not a store problem. But the city has no way for the store, like, you see my point? Like that that scorecard, although like, might come across as a simple prototype, I don't think
It,
there's
it
a thing there,
it can help diagnose where to begin to address the challenge.
And
Like
who?
help the
I think that's always
and
the
yeah,
question, right? Is like maybe what's missing from this diagram, or what I would like to see is
who's
affordability is on
involved?
the retailers. It's not
Hmm.
on the store.
Or
Access,
the
that's about the store. Nutrition, that's a community and population health problem. Waste, store, and advertising probably, or it kind of depends on
No,
hours,
nutrition
you
could
know.
be a store problem. That's not like
yeah.
no. It could. I mean, it depends on like this is the idea of a food desert though too, because there's like nutrition deserts. I mean, it
Right.
obviously
Right.
depends on the city. This happens more in I think New York and places where you can't. You can go to any number of gas stations and buy food, but you cannot go to like a good grocery store with real food.
Right.
That
Right.
being said, when there's not good nutrition, where there's a Whole Foods, you know, that's a
Mhm.
person.
Yep. Yep. And so I think things like trust, you could easily crawl Facebook, Twitter, or so on and find trust based scoring for, you know, a store or a specific location, I think is actually what I'm more thinking, but would be pretty nifty. And so, what I was drafting is like, man, if we stood up a scorecard, why don't we just call Safeway? I'd be like, can we test it out? We got this idea, or like Keith mentioned, city government. I mean, I know that's being very glib, but when you put it in these kind of simple terms, I think it is approachable to make a prototype that would define a couple of metrics. Some are public and can be composited, from publicly available sources. Others, which I might task Keith with, is to like stub out what kind of shape of data would we actually measure for something like access, if we could access an ERP or some kind of, actual data. But then we could also crawl the city site and see what the city of Denver is offering local organizations or so on. So those are some of the seeds that I'd want to explore. Like, I think if we just give Claude the goal of making something like this based off the transcript, Keith, what do you think? Or in our last kind of
Yeah,
5 minutes before we start building.
I started going down a rabbit hole of just like, can we get trucking data? But let's not worry about that. What I would say, what I would say is that I think that we probably should have started with this, but we should have probably like I'd like to end with like just describing the idea in one sentence and any sort of arguments that might ensue. One or two
Mhm.
sentences. Like you could do problem and then solution, or you could just say one sentence of the solution. Like what
Yeah,
is this to each of us?
before you continue, I would like to add the who, like who.
Yep, the who. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I think that like in the if we do podcast this, I'd like to see how that changes in at different points throughout.
For me, the way I would describe this is either a public health official at the city of Denver or the city of Orlando, or a supermarket manager that's dissatisfied. I'd kind of like put them both as like the who can
Mhm.
access a rubric or a scorecard that allows them to measure the current state of a store that's supplemented by public data about a location or a geo, right? Are people upset? Are they happy? Is it a food desert or not? Based on maps or whatever we have. And then invites them to meet. So if the supermarket owner that's upset or is dissatisfied fills this out and says, wow, we've got a lot of opportunities to talk to the city to get some grants to like make our place better, then they know who to call. Or if the public health official is like monitoring the store, we somehow say, oh, you could get in touch with management here. Right. I think that's the culmination of it in my mind. But that's just trying to keep it simple, I guess. But Nelson, what do you think? Or how would you describe it?
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, that's actually a lot more elaborate than I would have gone. I like the idea of the having somebody in the public space, in the government space, there because they're incentivized to achieve their missions, and that understanding what's the specific agenda for that term, right? Because it's making sure that I guess it income when it comes to marketing this or sharing this, I think we'll start to identify who would be more interested in something of this nature. And then as far as the owners and managers, yeah, I think it's they're going to have to in selecting what kind, local, small, or if it's a franchise that they're part of that allows for that kind of flexibility, like you just for that.
Hmm.
But yeah, the assessment tool has to be super simple and
I was
frictionless.
just going to say that,
Yeah,
right? I think that's
yeah,
one really, really important thing I wanted to
frictionless.
bring up is like it has to feel like Waze. And you'd be
Hmm.
like, well, what does a traffic app have to do with this? And instead of thinking of some long assessment that somebody fucking sits down and fills out for a half hour, it has to be more like what I like to call like see something, say something patterns,
Hmm.
right? Where like they have this thing, it's really easy to see something. You hit your app, you say something about it like, there's water on the ground, right? Or there's a traffic accident, or police ahead, right? Waze is like amazing at temporal transactional UX practices, right? Because obviously they don't want to be slapped with a lawsuit that they were distracting somebody while driving, even though that their literal product, like hypothesis, is inviting interaction while driving. It's like a very sticky area from a design problem, but they've done a really good job, right? So imagine if the primary UX of this survey or this tool was just a grid of like reactions. We say like lots of bikers today, lots of spills today. Oh, somebody threw up on aisle 12. Like, fight in the deli because we were out of something. Like, I don't know it goes on at a store every day, but I really just want to bring this up to say, like, it has to be so simple to input. Like, you have
Hmm.
to think like you're in the field, you're interacting with customers, or even let's say you're an inspector that uses it, like a public health official. I mean, inspector's too formal, but you get my point. Like they're just going to be like driving by, stopping in, walking around, just kind of taking a pulse. It's not going to be some formal audit. I don't think we'll ever get anybody
No,
to
I
fill
don't.
it
I
out.
don't think so either. But I would like to bring up like I think a paradigm that would be more interesting than this one to approach. Although I don't think we're fully there on a distribution level yet. Which is just like this is what Apple Intelligence apps are going to be like able to do, which is like I'm thinking like whenever they walk into the store, we have multiple stores on the app, and like that little part on your iPhone at the top that could just be like a square. It's just like it just says like the store name, and you know you're there. And if I just honestly, my dream is I just lift that up. Something bad happens, I just lift that up. I start talking shit, and the government knows.
That's
Mm.
That's
interesting,
crazy.
man.
Because
Yeah.
that's more of the next door approach to like community information rather
Or
than
like
like
citizen. Yeah, it's
well,
like
because you could yeah,
community
you
reporting.
could surveil or you can have like rats. Those are like the two ways to learn about what's going on, right? And
Well,
so
and like again, though, the word that we're trying to shift to, I think, and what we want to prototype, although we know surveil is a part of reading data that is necessary to add value, like, yeah, all the products today have some form of surveillance. We know the public sentiment around that word is through the floor, right? It's negative social equity to talk about surveillance right now. Therefore, the whole premise that I was trying to point us to in the prototype should be every single word, color, logo, font should be all about support, right? Like whatever data we're using should be about support, not narking and
well, no, it's yeah. I mean, it's narking, but like the difference is just transparency of what you're doing
Transparency.
too,
Yeah.
right? Like
transparent. Yeah,
if we were
yeah.
just letting people talk shit, just giving it to the government, like I think this needs to be more like a Foursquare or something, where it's like
Hmm.
we knew you were in the store, you said this, we're that's all we know. You know, I think if we got a lot of people doing that, which I think is possible, if the apps end up being quick enough on these phones,
Yeah.
You
like
know,
Well,
this
getting that
this
buy-in to
reminds me
participate.
this reminds me of another really cool app that I used out in DC recently. It's called In Kind. Have y'all seen this company growing or like come across them at all? They're like a restaurant company that partners with venues. And I mean, they're not like super nice venues, but it is quite community oriented in a way where like they're oftentimes vegan or, kind of more contemporary spots. But what happens is like when you sign up for the app, you get a free $50. And when you spend or transact that coupon at the restaurant, then that restaurant gets the revenue to then give to other people. So it is very much like a circular kind of funding scheme, right? Where like they buy in, it creates a pool of money for coupons. It's almost like a cooperative where then like when I spend that coupon, that goes into their restaurant's pool of money that then, incentivizes people to come with discounts and then feeds it back into the in-kind like system.
so yeah, I worked at a company that had
Very cool.
that did this same loop, but threw a bank in there. It was crazy.
Yeah, sure. And so
There was like,
I,
let's have three people do this.
but
I
the
think this is
user
really cool.
experience is great, right? Like there's this, like, it's like
It's easy.
once you tell them that you're using it and you give them like your account or whatever, it's seamless. Like you never really see the discount, which I know sounds weird, but it's like you don't even know that it's there. You just walk out of having a great meal for like $40 or $30. It's pretty cool.
I'd be
But
curious
anyways,
what the owners of the restaurant are finding.
I
But
mean, like I said, it's
if they're
you know
growing, then they probably it's probably working on some.
it's growing like crazy. I mean, yeah, it's all over DC now, and I didn't even realize how many were in Denver until I just saw that. So
Yeah, I like the idea of like almost like an app that like polices through public data, like these grocery stores. I like that.
it's interesting, yeah,
I
because
think
I
I,
mean,
I think it really matches like it I mean if we can make it if there's gonna people are gonna give more feedback when they can talk to computers, which I expect they will.
Hmm.
Like this is America.
mhm.
That's what we do. We give feedback. And it's like that like I think that as people start to do that, especially if it doesn't be associated with their personal name, but I still would like it to be like like a validated person, right? That we knew was in the store and like experienced something. I feel like that data could be super helpful and people could vent. They could say positive things, they could say helpful things, like who knows how they'll use it.
Mm. So the feedback could occur, let's say, while you're putting away the very groceries you just bought, you have a window, let's say, to provide that,
That's
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
interesting.
Or a prompt.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You'd have like a window that expires, right? And then you
Right.
can leave that feedback. And I mean, it's just like the popularity of like, I mean, in New York City, they want to do like government owned grocery stores. Like there are already grocery stores. Like there's a lot of grocery stores that are falling short. like
Hmm.
for people, like in a very real way. And like this would help like start to figure out what that is, give some warning signs. And like I said, if it's public data, I would go right to the city and say, you guys should look at this if we're getting real data on these stores. Uh, and in terms of making money, I don't know about this. Like this feels more of a civic project to me. Is what like I would actually almost explicitly say this is like a. I feel like there's a level of civic projects people do with
I
AI.
don't know though, man. I really do believe that brands understand the predicament they're being put in. Like, think about somebody like Sprouts or City Market, which is your more like rural markets out in Colorado, right? Like HEB is another great example where they understand that the customer experience is what's driving people to the store, not just prices. Like, it's about like, do I feel like that grocery store is a part of my community? Are they showing up? Are they there? And those are the ones that are winning in the space right now, right? Everybody else is getting margin to hell and squeezed through inflation when HEB's profits, my understanding is HEB's profits have never been higher. You know?
All right.
Uh,
So I've got a roll. I think we have enough here.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Eli,
For
if you
sure.
want to start a project, we can move and meet tomorrow or the next day.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay, we're back Friday morning. Just a brief recap. Yesterday, we were talking with Keith and Nelson about an idea for the supermarket initiative that Black Flag Design has been kicking around the past few months, really ever since Nelson joined. And we wanted to test drive, GPT-5.6, test drive some of Keith's process building with these looping agents or these goal-based agents. I was talking with Bobby, wanted to invite him in. And so we were just talking about like, or what I want to bring it back to is like bottling up engineering talent is easier than ever, right? And skills, plugins, environments. We can manage all of this via an organization or the cloud. And I was jokingly saying, like, oh, I want to bottle up Bobby's expertise. And I would love if Keith had like 50 Bobbies to collaborate with. Like, just imagine how productive we would be. And Claude, and there's Cursor managed agents, there's Claude managed agents, but I just wanted to come back to this idea that like we can bottle up an agent, run it in a container in the cloud, and it could just have, all of its Claude MD, its skills, its agents MD files, like, and then we could build in the expected behaviors of the agent, but run it across tasks, on a Kanban board where it picks it up, it moves it along, you know, it's showing here like, oh, I might trigger it to in progress, but then the agent's going to move it to in review, done. It's going to, maybe do its own review and self reflection, so on and so forth. So this is where I think we're heading is that like right now we're the ones in the IDE, like prompting the AI along. But the next edge is absolutely having 10 AIs that are working, running commands, doing things on your behalf, putting up PRs that you come back to and you review and are more testing things like user experience. Did it really end to end work? Right? Does it match the business logic that we said it should? And then kicking off other tasks, I think. And so, I mean, I'm not saying Keith is doing exactly this right now, but like we are working more from linear and chat feed, chats than we are in the terminal or in the code. I believe. At least that's what I'm seeing in all the activity. And so, Bobby, I know it's like, yeah, like we have to really monitor them. We have to like read what they're doing and know what they're doing. But at the same time, in this experiment, if we do get cognitively, like we just take a step back and say, like, what can 5.6 rip in a night? And that's what I think we want to come back and talk about here is just like, Keith, how did you approach it? When we kind of left with the transcript yesterday, why don't you just share what you did and I'll screen share, and kind of help drive. But like how did last night go?
Yeah, so it went really well. I actually did two of these at once, which is interesting. I don't feel like there was a lack of
Really?
quality, but well, no, I think it's important to say because I wanted to see if I could. And the weird answer is that the one that's a mobile app is still running with this new model. It's just still going. I don't know how long I want to do that for, but it's still working on the mobile app like actively. It solved the Cocoa Pods error. It took it like 20 minutes, like it would for me. I was like, all right, this is awesome.
I remember Cocoa Pods. And
And I did oh, sorry, I did something crazy. I made a native app. I know no one said I should do that, but I've never have, and I never have, but I've built a lot of things like that art. Like I've built a lot of like hybrid apps, so I know a lot about native apps, so I know what to do. I just never really knew how to like code in Swift very well. So I was like, let's just give that a shot for this school bus app. And it seemingly like it worked. Like it has it all up. I know Convex works. Convex has native iOS integrations, which is I wouldn't have chosen it if it didn't have that.
wait, so just to clarify though, did you do both the supermarket one and the school bus one, or did you do two versions?
Yeah. I'm going a little off topic, but I'm trying to show how I was doing this in parallel. I didn't mean to. I was trying not to get specifics there. On the school bus one, I just did the conventional web app template. Our conventional web app template right now rolls a convex version of Matthias's kind of architecture concept, but not actually as in depth, Bobby. Where it does a front end for the admin panel and a front end for a user facing panel connected to the same convex backend with different routes. And that's what it rolls out and starts building off of. And so I have that plus like a homepage, and like you can click through the app, you guys can get the URL. If you guys just give me like one more minute, it didn't deploy the latest CSS, which makes a huge difference for this demo.
We're good. Yeah, we got time. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because what it ended up doing in, well, I guess you want to talk more about the process. I could talk about this all day. So what I ended up doing is I made sure that throughout the day we talked about it while we were all on the phone. So I have like numerous touch points of each of us like weighing in on what it is. I only have it except the 1 hour from the podcast with Nelson. And so I had a lot of thoughts going into it. Eli put together a Claude design, and then there were multiple email threads about it. And that was all. I think that was all the notes I found. So the first thing I do is I try to aggregate all the notes. It used to be so the AI had access to it. Now it's 100%. So I know what the fuck is going on. Right. And so now I just aggregate like all that stuff. I see it just in the chat. I always have it share links. So I'm clicking through and reading all the things and making sure I understand where we're at. And then the next thing I do is I put together like a 10 to 15 like question. Like I have it ask me 10 to 15 questions in plan mode on Codex, but I don't think you don't have to be on plan mode in anything else. It usually just asks you the questions, but it'll ask me like questions in batches of 3. I don't know why I say 10 to 15. It's 9 or 15 really, or like 12. And it asks me in batches of 3. And it's under the skill I have is just a single markdown file that tells it that like you're trying to tell me you understand. I stole this from you, Bobby. Like I have a skill where it tries to tell me that I understand how the process is going to work. And so I roll it through that each time. There's a couple repetitive questions I answer for the template to roll out. And then there's some where I turn the prompt on and I'm talking to it, telling it like, no, that's not really what Eli said. We shouldn't do it that way. That's not really how we should do that. And then I have it confirmed that it's going to do the template the same way every time. So far, it has not done it the same way every time, but it's getting there. It's like the last rollout. This rollout dropped the clerk key at one point. I had to just go get it myself. That's what I mean by it didn't work every time. But there were 10 other keys, so it's doing fine. In this case, then what we do is we roll up is that the template's then going to use like infrastructure as code is politely what I'm calling the APIs, Bobby, because that is the technically right term. Is that it'll roll out like an instance for like for Convex, it'll roll out an instance for like that. That's our entire back end. It'll roll out an instance for the React app on Pages, right? It does all of that stuff, but it does that by copying the actions of the template repo. So it's just running the actions. That's what it's doing. It's made edits every time, but surely it can do it so it won't make an edit. But it's not writing those same patterns each time and just making it up. It's copying it and then sometimes editing things.
Tweaking.
Secrets, man. I don't know why it's like, oh, let's just add a step here.
We need to solve for that.
Well, the problem is that in GitHub it like has permissions around the template or around like that, and I'm just hesitant to solve every problem by fucking with permissions. But I could give the thing permission to just copy secrets from any repo, and I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, I'm saying like as a whole.
So right now it goes into 1Password. I have to fucking be here and like buzz in with my finger, and then it gets the code from like the team 1Password. That's where it gets like the convex deploy key to like go and make a new convex project. thanks to Bobby for getting a lot of our production loads off this account so I could do something like this. And I think that, yeah, I mean, in general, that's what it does. And then I don't know how in depth we want to go, but it rolls out like all of the base things you need for an app. So it has like a permission model for admins versus regular users, which is how it starts. Admins administer users. I know there's tons of other models that can get rolled out, but that's just like the simplest base one. In this case, it didn't mess with that at all, but it can add new permissions in Clerk, because Clerk's its own separate service, and it's got its own documentation that rolls out with the template repo. It's like pretty set up, but I feel confident in it because it's like a separate service and it can only do shit Clerk will let it do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know I don't want to sound like too bombastic, but like in my experience with the web app template, and where at least even it was in its earliest phase, it's changed since I last like created a repo from it. Is like for somebody like myself working sales leads or exploring things that I am just prototyping, come in here, clone it, start a project, run these commands, hook up my credentials, and I'm up and running with a full stack app in 4 hours, maybe less. It is still time, button seat, making sure I'm linking everything up, Clerk, Convex, so on. Like I have been a bit more manual, right? Not even using like the 1Password references Keith was sharing. But to me, the obvious like thing is like, well, now we can like see what these ideas of like replication and just like sort of mass customization could look like. It's pretty robust. I've been very, very impressed. So
yeah, and I'd like to call out for all the listeners that image right there was indeed the template, and that is written for the agent.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, and it kind of reminds me of like, again, I'm not to sound too alarmist or just overselling or overhyping, but like, I remember reading and seeing how elegant something like Stripe was. And just knowing how obviously better, I mean, what was their kind of saying, right? It was like 12 lines of code, right? And you were handling payments or something. That was like their early value proposition. And it feels like that, where I'm just like, oh, I give this to the agent. Super elegant, it's super elegant. It's tight. The template spins up. The actions come online. Like, sure, there's always some configuration or something to do, but yeah, very cool, Keith. So like, where did it lead you? Do you want to screen share a couple of, or do you have them running?
I do have them running. Give me 1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, like, I just want to know, like, how wide is the app? Like, is it that it covers a big bunch of space, or is it a very narrow, like a target? Like, did you have to think in multiple areas, or was it mostly centralized to, a certain kind of idea or two? And then in that, could you explain like how deep the features go? Is it feature rich, or is it, kind of basic? Because that kind of sets the stage for like, is it amazing, or is it, kind of basic at this point? Because not to shit on your work, but because most people can do this these days.
No, 100%. And so I'd say, like, not to shit on my work, but kind of where I'm at with this is that I think that when you roll one of these out, right? Like, I'm obviously trying to turn this around in 24 hours. I did 2 at the same time. That probably had some level of slowing me down. But to me, it's like I've found that you have to spend like 1/3 of your time building it and like 2/3 of your time like talking to it about how to figure out how to communicate it to the rest of your team about what you did.
So that
And I will actively say that I'm in like the middle of that second 2/3 process right now with this. But I think that's okay for this because we can kind of see what it did together. I've been doing a lot of spot checks on the CSS this morning, but I do know what it did when it rolled out the template, because I rolled out a base version that was black and white before I started and like knew the navigation structure at the beginning. So, but it might have added a few new things, but it looks good. If it's cool, I'd love to share one of you guys going through it. But before we start, I'm happy to show like what I'm going to be doing in the background because I think it's relevant for the listeners.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. However you want to approach it. Yeah.
Because I don't want to be the one driving, because like if I was giving a demo, that's fine. But if you could find people that are like down to do this, which is very hard amongst clients and people that have other things to do, I'll say that. If you could find someone that will like go through these once. I mean, this passes the test. When I'm saying it's done and I'm sounding hesitant, it's that I don't know how, I don't have a way I'm trying to pitch you guys to feel about this. I know that it's passed the test, that there could be obviously something wrong. It passed my visual CSS test. Like, it looks pretty all right. And it is built based off what we were talking about. It's got users that use this. Anybody that signs in with the black flag email automatically becomes an admin. And so you have access to the admin panel, which always has a link to it over here. And then there's different workspaces for different stores, and you can add different stores in the admin panel if you wanted to. And then the only thing of note is that if you come in with your black flag email to staging-fullshelf.blackflag.com .design. Wow. Like, I've been working here for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you guys, if you guys pull it up though, what I'm going to be doing in the background is Cursor has this design mode, and I was indeed just playing with the new model, but for this one in particular, I'm going to end up using the Cursor Composer 2.5 model because it's super fast. And what I'll do is I have a local version of this running that I'll have in my tab, and that's why I didn't want to share, because like we could do live editing there. I'm probably going to do some live editing, or at least have it record a linear ticket of the stuff we're doing while we're working. And I'd love to just kind of get your guys' reactions going from the homepage. I will call out a very noticeable problem. If you guys saw me pausing before this demo started, like I was nervous, I can't find the log out button on this damn thing. It might not have built one.
I mean, that is the funniest part of this, right? Like, you might have just
I wanted it to ship with our feedback widget in there.
Wait. I can one up you on funny right now. Look at your chat. Look how much times you cuss the thing out. And then,
yeah, sorry, I thought it cached like the not CSS for the version without images and CSS, and I was just losing it. And then I was like, oh wait, I can hard refresh. I'm an idiot.
I'm just saying, imagine you had done this in Cursor, and then it would have made sense to name Cursor.
Cursor, yeah, that's a good one. Good catch.
No, that's funny. That's funny. Like, and then to me, it's like, I don't know. This isn't how I build it, like yelling at it like this. I mean, sometimes, but what I'm trying to do here is like prepare for the presentation.
Yeah.
Is like the hardest part.
Yeah, just do what I'm saying. It's because you're on the same conversation, right? Like, how long have you been running that thing?
This one's been running for like probably an hour, and I am testing its multiplayer feature. Or not multiplayer, what do they call it? Task? Yeah, multitask.
Multitasking. Okay, so I've got it pulled up here. Should I like switch the screen share and kind of just explore it? Like, let's see how far.
Yep, that would be my preference. I'm not live editing what you're looking at. So you're going to be looking at this. So if something doesn't work, that'd be an issue, but we'll find out.
Awesome.
Let me see here.
I can tell you that this card that you're having right there, I don't know if that's the same. Okay, that's not the same.
Dude, I can't stop giving me feedback on this page. I can't sign out. So I can't go back. I can't go back and see it.
Who would be the end user signing up to this, like looking at this page right now?
Yeah, so I guess maybe a brief recap of yesterday was, the supermarket initiative is all about like speculative futures we want to see our supermarkets, move into, knowing they're struggling in food deserts, nutrition deserts, razor thin margins. I think last I read is most supermarkets are like at 1.7% margins. I mean, there's no wiggle room, to give discounts back to the consumers. We talked about how extractive they are, right? Like, they're basically just advertising and billboards in a distribution warehouse. And so how do we make them more a part of our community? How do we make them more effective? Can everybody win, right? So I think we kind of left those discussions with, can we help the supermarket manager that's looking for opportunities to improve? Like, they know the store needs to improve. Or can we help the public health official that's looking, to solve some of these problems or address them from a city side? And we talked about a scorecard where they could share that the supermarket manager could get access to subsidies, kickbacks, city incentives, state incentives. There's actually a lot of opportunities for groceries and businesses to do that kind of thing. They just don't know where to look. On the flip side, the public health officials are always looking for ones that qualify because they have to give the money away, right? Like they're always trying to meet the commitments that are the
Match.
mandates that they have. So interesting matching kind of idea, and I think scoring idea was the goal. I'll sign in with Black Flag. Let's see if we can just dive in. So remember, this was a blank repo last night, right? So Keith actually set up a clerk app,
Yep,
handles
and I want
sign
to be
in.
clear too that this is a bit of a diverge exercise. I'm not diverging from the concept. There's just like some like the way I did this is I know I approved some things that probably won't be in the final app, but we should have a discussion about it. Can you open it?
Let's see. I did just sign in. I'll try to retry maybe. There we go. Start with one store the team can name.
Yes. So to be clear, you're an admin coming in. Come on.
Let's see.
And its slug already exists. Maybe refresh.
I am. I could almost certainly solve this from my side in the database. Give me a second. I've already typed it in. It's running.
Good. We'll cut this part out.
Yeah, it's all good. Once it does work though, then this is the problem that's not working. Is once you click it, you don't have to go through setting up the pilot workspace. It just does a demo one.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. That's why I was giving that error.
Yeah.
Like seeded already, but it didn't.
Yeah, that's a seed. I told it to just make that a seed button, and it just seeds it. Which I could have just said use fake data, and then that would have worked.
Well, I mean, that brings me to another topic, right? Like the way like these agents want to spec out something and then just start hard coding. And to me, it's still a question of, man, I kind of still want to start with the design just so that I can understand that you understand how I really want it to work. Like even the steps in order, I had plotted out that S world last night and I told it to make a slide representation of what you believe this app looks like. And I caught the order like was so weird that I was like, you mean to tell me that's what's in the spec? And so now I'm questioning myself, should I just allow you to jump in because you have a badass spec? Or should I make you represent the design because that's how we began as developers?
But this brings me back to the whole idea of like Claude managed agents, where at the review stage, we can always fire off an adversarial review that's going to ask those types of critical questions even more consistently than maybe any of us would like recall or like do routinely.
Yeah,
you know?
and I also
yeah, I think that's a great method that people should use for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bobby, to answer your question, like, should you wait on the design? I think that it's almost like we have to do the design of whatever the design needs to us. It doesn't even need to mean the fucking perfect thing. Like I laid this out in boxes and stuff, and this page that's broken now wasn't in that design because I didn't even think about seeding the shit until this morning. And like, of course, it's the thing that breaks. We'll see if the rest of the shit's broken, but yeah, try to click it again. It should be.
And when we say design, it doesn't have to be like a polished. It's. I mean,
No,
I'm
it's what. Yeah,
wire, not even wireframes, more like a storyboard or an architecture site map type of thing. Like, look, this is what happens at the beginning. These are the things that happen in the middle. These are the end results. And across the lane for different end users, the public health official, basically the UX overview of each of these participants.
Right, because we don't want a hillbilly house later. Like I'm scared. I told this yesterday to get so far into a spec that the schema is fucked, right? Because you forgot like there's this tiny thing that the AI doesn't really grok the same way a human would, like this nuance. And the nuance itself is like, whoa, that's really supposed to be in the schema. And then you go in there and patch that in because AI can. But now the app's kind of a hillbilly house in that it wasn't in the master blueprint, but you added a bedroom and the bedroom don't have plumbing hooked up correctly.
Right. Yeah. I don't have a good solution to that problem, Bobby, but in my mind, like the biggest way to avoid that, like just like I said with this screen where it's like I added that in this morning, like is if you can bite off a chunk where you can get the whole design into your head, whatever that is, right? Like it's because I mean it's not even size. I mean sometimes there's just complicated workflows and shit. Like there's only so much we can do, and it's not constrained by the amount we can type on the keyboard. It's constrained by how fast can you fucking figure out how all these lines connect to these boxes the correct way, right? And if you're not able to hold the architecture in your head, then it's gonna do something on its own.
Right, and that's why like if you get too ambitious and you move too fast, it's easy to overlook because I shared that spec out with Eli. And I thought, man, it's a pretty good spec. It considers legal, it considers, these things, but it didn't consider the tiny things that a human would. And that's like order of operations. Like, how would a human, and not just a human, but like a business, like say for the movie cast, right? If you're gonna do a submission, well, I would wanna know, do you want your headshots, your whole body, or, like, what kind of movies are you interested in doing before I ever even accept you into a contract? When in that spec, the spec was saying, at the contract level, then let them opt in, but at that point, they've already been selected, and it's like, well, you're allowing a human to change the contract after they've been selected? It just doesn't make sense for a human, and it's like, "Oh, well, that nuance exists because of the legal," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you kind of, like, need to either double up on that so that the idea travels from submission to that point or something, right? It can't just be so hard that that's the reason, right? Because humans, they're like, what the hell? Businesses, they need flexibility. You're gonna hard set them in something so weird that it don't make sense now. And to fix that tiny little fucking thing, it turns into a mountain.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's an interesting point, and it does also like remind me that oftentimes what we're leaving out that we should probably include more in our context are literal like business models, literal like business cases and write-ups about like how does it work? How do they
This-
make money? What is the point of the
So I
story,
have that.
you know?
I'm gonna pull that up right now. BMC. You guys familiar with this? Obviously, you are. Business model canvas, great tool to see everything at once, how the business works, coupled with the value proposition canvas for basically telling us what that product market fit looks like. And so I'll quickly run through this canvas, 9 blocks, basic identifying the key elements of the business. The value proposition is what the business is and what it offers to each of the customer segments that we've defined. So the public health officials, store operators, community organizations, and the residents and store employees. So this is based on what we've discussed, but essentially these are the two key things that we want to match. Make sure that that value prop, for example, for the cities and public health officials, they want store level scorecards that make food access issues diagnosable and actionable without heavy audits. Let me zoom in so we can read a little bit more closely. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay. I don't know if you can read that still.
Yeah, we can even
That's better.
zoom in on the recording after. Yeah.
Okay. And then for the retailers, the store operators, location based trust and shrink diagnostics that differentiate stores and unblock incentives. And then we have for the community orgs, shared evidence and coordination tools. So coordination tools to convene stores and city around interventions. So as we've mentioned, it is multiple goals for multiple people. And so how do we coordinate that across the entire business? I won't get into the gist of it, but these are identifying who are the key partners involved, grocery chains, city food access office, more community orgs,
What did it
and
what
public.
did it fill out for like revenue streams and such?
But
Did you get
yes,
that
yes.
far?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so so the first test is a hybrid funded pilot between the city and the foundations that are funded. They fund the deployment and chains co-fund with model savings. So it projected some numbers. I ran this against Perplexity to get some validation with some research, and then this can escalate to a civic license, annual
Mhm.
city and public health budget lines, and then retailer subscription per store or region and facilitation.
Yeah, so if I were to play this out, right, or what and I wish our agents were thinking about this. Like,
Hmm.
I think our engineering agents, right, like running amok in our code bases, actually need these kind of concepts as core ideas or core, sort of memory, because that's what they're building in service of at the end of the day, right? And Bobby always is the first to remind us of like, what's the business logic? What's the business logic, right? Like, how does it actually work? Is like, if I, met the grocery chain, CEO in an elevator, I would say, hey, you throw down on a pilot like this and you get positive brand equity in your community in a matter of weeks, right? Like, we can measure the store, give you levers, give you funds to go after connections at your city. Then vice versa, if I was talking to the city, I'd say, public health official, you're trying to increase, population health and nutrition access. Here's the grocery owner, so on and so forth, right? So like, I love how this just makes it much more obviously what's in it for them. What do they get? And I think we keep a lot of this like knowledge right now embedded in the professionals, or it's like written in emails. It's not really in our code base, but I think it needs to get to that point. But that's just, my
Yeah. Yeah.
my
The
two
other half
cents.
is translating all this to those that are going to pull the levers and fund this and participate. So yeah. Yeah, making it more viable, right? This now it seems more viable because now we say, all right, these are the costs involved, these are the resources involved to stand this up, and these are the things we need to be doing to do this on the operational side, marketing side, and how do we handle the relationships with those stakeholders, those customer segments.
Yeah, and that reminds me, it's not a technology problem; it's a people problem.
Yeah. So yeah, yesterday we talked about things that had to do with, education. We didn't touch, we didn't, but implied that, oh, there needs to be an awareness and education component to this for it to even get out there. But what's helpful is the what's also helpful is then breaking it down by each of the customer segments that we talked about. So in this one, it's the store operator. And so the value proposition canvas, which is this diagram we're looking at here, on the left side, you have the value map of what the product is and the gain creators and pain relievers. What does that mean? Well, on the right side, you have the customer profile. It's best to start with looking at what is their job to be done, right? What is their goal? So for the store operator, they want to find what's really hurting at this location, identify what that is, unlock funding without blowing up the margins, right? And then show leadership and neighbors that they're improving. So these are the identified customer jobs. Obviously, we can validate this or verify this with in talking to real store operators. But what are their goals or things that they want to have more of are listed here in the gains.
Mm-hmm.
Issues routed to the right owner quarterly, new grants captured per year, a local sentiment score moves up, right? And typically the pains are the opposite of that. Blamed online for cities' broken sidewalks, right? Like the example we gave yesterday. This so we do this across. So identify what their jobs are and match that with. But yeah, we are going to have a store scorecard. We are going to have issued ownership classifier, store, city, landlord, um, and be able to give them access to those grants and incentives in a lot more efficient and easier way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hey, by the way, we
yep.
need to turn this into a BFD template so I can
Yeah, I'd like
replicate
to say
this.
too that I did customer profiles on each of the 3 user types before I started this progress.
Okay.
I think that all the discrepancies we're going to see are because I didn't do a business model canvas or something like this, and we didn't all agree, or we didn't agree on, or you guys have no idea what I was thinking. Is really what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's yeah.
Well, what I'm
identifying.
saying
And
is that
next time,
this is actually exactly perfect, because next time we'll do this first, and then I'll go off
well,
this.
actually, I think we found step 2, right? I think and it's something we've circled the drain on a lot, but one should be that kind of just open discussion, align on something. We should probably talk over this as step 2. Then step 3 should be reviewing a prototype that's been evolved, because I think it gives it much more coherence, right? And it is much more opinionated, which is great. Like you're mentioning, Keith, I'm totally cool with the divergence, because we're just trying, we're trying this out. But I think also this would be great to pilot with Bobby's Cast World, he's got a great PDF ready to go. What if we all got together, did the business model, did the value proposition canvas, help give him that feedback. And then I bet, using Keith's templates, we could stand it up, and just try it out. So I'm just saying, let's try this loop again, and see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
think it
very
would.
cool, Nelson. I think it's a great next step to take, and just make sure to get these PDFs to us so we can include them. I don't know how much more time you guys have, Keith. I don't know where the app's at, but I do need to run to another call here in about 10 minutes, maybe at max. So I do have to run. But what are you guys thinking at this point?
I want to just kind of state that I did the personas in a way, and when I said it's kind of diverged, is that it very much it kind of blended them a little too much. It thinks that all 3 people are going to be kind of up and in this app together. I think they would be it'd be the same app for them, but they would have these
Their
tabs would
own.
display differently for different people, right? And right now the words on in the context is going to be very neutral, kind of trying to talk to all 3 of them at once. And so what this is it's got, this today page. Like I said, this presentation is not going to be the greatest. We're going to be kind of discovering this together, but it's got a lot of the data that we had talked about. This kind of shows different ratings for the store. This is how people rated them as shopping trip success, EBT friendly availability, healthy breakfast affordability, things we would rate on. This is the store's profile basically that would show. I tried to make it a little bit more consumery, and this animation is what it did. Don't love that. I think this needs to be more of something that they would see in a consumer app, potentially even a mobile app itself, in my mind, for people to actually use it. So I wanted to say that out loud too. The next one is you can find multiple places. We just have one right now, but you could add more in the admin panel, and we could stage, whatever stores actually come online. The check-in is the user-facing feature. That's the one that, like I said, this is the one where they actually go and give the rating. We had talked about doing AI ratings. We are not doing that right now in this first cut. I don't think this is a game changer. This is just a basic rating system. They leave ratings here. It'll reflect the scorecard. So the difference here the differentiation that it's drawing, right? And I did talk to it about this, and I don't think I've nailed this, is that there's a scorecard, right? And the scorecard is shown to end users in the today feature and the places and things when they click into a store's profile too, right? But this scorecard is see how there's a public preview? It comes out different top level to the public. The store has a lower level scorecard that says additional data. I don't think it has additional data on there right now, but in theory, comments and things don't have to go right up into the post. I don't know if we want that. Maybe that kind of defeats the point.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I mean, okay, so I guess my questions are more around maybe kind of coming back to how Bobby opened us a little bit, is how wide or deep is it actually? For people listening, or it might be okay, it's just another vibe coded thing. Can you talk a little bit more just to where the holes are? I don't think there's any expectation of it being perfect, because this is 24 hours, not even since we last talked. But tell me a little bit, there's a whole database. There's obviously clerk is fully set up. What's going on here that you think people, if they only remember 10% of what we've talked about, what do you want them to take away? Or what should they remember?
Yeah, for the listeners, because I could answer that question. Okay, so I think that if you take one thing away from this, it would be that what I've done feels like I just didn't understand what they were talking about. But what I'm really trying to do is like create, like, software is so much more than just like a bunch of static designs of a user facing app. It's like the administration of it. Like we have like the ability to seed this data. It's the ability to organize this software in a way. I'm not saying fake data or anything like that. It's like you add things to the database, you actually administer the software so that if we're going to go out and take this to users, which is the end goal, there is a level of like other software you have to build around your software. And that's what our template scaffolds out, is like a very simple structure that we use often in our existing products to have like an administrator side and then a user side. And then we almost always have many different types of users, and trying to figure out how they work together is something that you never really nail in the first design unless you have 3 separate apps, right? And so what I think I've done here is I've kind of given like my pitch on this with this, but at the same time, it's like I think this reveals a lot of those gaps where it's like what it's trying to do there, like what it's trying to do in the scorecard versus like what the user sees is something I did not think through well enough, or that we never really talked about, right? And so if you view this as me presenting a final product, you will come away feeling like, oh, this is terrible. But if we could do it faster, we could do it in 24 hours, we could say, and you ask the question, why did it do this? Right? I watched it do it. I'm not like confused to have this happen. There's just things that you would stop it for versus not. Right? And I do think that if we align with the business case where we all had a shared mental model of the business case going in, that me doing things like this would feel less crazy. And for the first cut, I think that this makes sense because it kind of brings up like, okay, like how do we get the stores in? How do we get the users in? How do we get or the actual store people that go to the store in? And then how do we get the community organization / government in, right? And I think that we have to have like a good first cut at that to present to people. And like the whole idea of doing prototypes this fast is that you're going to present this to people and get it in front of like maybe not all your users. I wouldn't necessarily say we should throw vibe coded prototypes if you've got 1 million users coming to the site. But if we don't have oftentimes we start with a new idea, either in an existing organization or in a brand new organization starting from scratch. And if it's a new organization or a new product starting from scratch, there are not people on this product, right? If we had a domain expert about this area, we'd be able to do a lot better. We could do a lot better just talking to people, but to do that, we have to agree on what we want to pitch them first, right? And this is meant to be the first part of a conversation to do that in 24 hours. Like,
Yeah,
I want to iterate on this and get to where we need to be.
I want to show something, Keith, that I think proves the point that like boils down what you're saying to like a very simple storytelling analog. And I think if you can bear with me, that what you're saying in my view is like just get to it, right? Like we're kind of cutting to the chase and we're asking the harder questions that businesses need to be asking regardless, and getting past a lot of the preamble or some of the initial configuration or setup that typically even sometimes took weeks, if not months in enterprise, for no real good reason. And in storytelling, right, if you think of like the conventional approach of beginning, middle, and end, right, that's like what everybody expects to see. But there's this concept of in medias res that means in the midst of it, where I think the strategy we're taking with our partners is we hear their ideas and we say, well, yes, and right, like we go further, we give them the whole stack, we get them set up, and we're like, put up or shut up, right? Like we dive them, straight to the point. And sometimes that creates really rich stories, but then you do have to loop back, and that's okay, right? Like as long as we know where we're taking our customers, or we know where we're taking our partners, is we say, hey, we are going to skip this part, but don't worry, we're going to be back here in 6 weeks and we'll be able to define the business model better, having prototyped it, gotten it wrong, been messy, been creative, played in the sandbox together. And so I just want to say that there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I think you're actually totally on to something that people who keep people, drawn in with good stories do well. or
Yeah,
doing a
what I'm
pinch
saying though
hitting.
is I think the natural human tendency for me to say that, well, it's in a weird like Schrodinger's cat situation. Like if like if I 5 years ago had said to you, do you want to see what this is going to look like in 2 weeks, right? Then you would be like, yeah, immediately, right? But that's
Well,
not,
and I'd be like, how much is it going to cost? And you would have
yeah.
told me 50 G's. And
But
I'd be like,
it's important to say that that's like not. It's also like not. If you think of it that way, right? That's where vibe coding disappoints, right? Because or like vibe coding or like this is agentic engineering at this point. Like there's so many tests in here, it's not a vibe. But my idea though is like as you build this out, right? I could build it faster, but I would have had 2 weeks of conversations with whoever or just myself while I was slowly typing this out in the past. That I would have gone to you at lunch and said, "Hey, does this look good?" And you said no, like 3 days in, right? And I would have iterated on it and I would have had a due date in 2 weeks, right? And it would have been kind of my journey through like asking for feedback slash building it slash a lot of devs don't even ask for feedback at all. They just take 2 weeks to build it, which isn't
no,
even a bad
Substack.
necessarily a bad thing. And what I'm saying though is if you come back, like people kind of like in 2 weeks and on that timeline, we're already spending, I mean, thousands of dollars for this stuff, right? Your feedback is not going to be the truth if you have a vested interest in the outcome of that project, no matter what you think. You want that thing to come out, right? You want that thing to be done right now. And you're gonna naturally hedge for I'm gonna give feedback that will build that bridge to get to the end, right? The fastest. That's oftentimes what product managers are doing, whether they like say it or not. They're like, I don't in the symptom of that is like, oh, I don't want to say that because like this is fine. I don't want to send them down the wrong hole, right? And everybody manages devs that way. Like at the end of the day, right? And what I'm saying is, if you if and people do this naturally. I mean, I did this for constant, where if I either pitch it as done or feel it that it's done, then I like get the feedback that I would have gotten after 2 weeks, and it's not as easy to figure out if we're all on the same page or not, right? Because I don't actually need that feedback. I need to know like, is this what we were expecting? How do you really feel? We could come back tomorrow with a whole different version of it at this stage of this thing,
Well,
right?
I would look, I want to say this because I work with you and I want the viewers to understand the context is that we have some unique kind of customers here, right? And maybe you do too in this world because the world has changed a bit with AI. And it's that you have a lot of dreamers with ideas and they don't really have like me, I'm a developer and I was schooled under the law of get the domain specific business logic from the domain expert and don't try to invent that yourself, right? And in this day and age with AI, it's kind of like, maybe I could augment that. Maybe I could go a step further. And so a lot of our clients here at Black Flag are dreamers, right? They have an idea. They're kind of a domain expert, but they may not be as relevant anymore as they used to be in the domain that they come from a lot of years. But I mean, ground level right now, today, they may not be up to date with what's really happening in that field. So we have room to interpret, but I kind of see us as a tattoo studio, right? You go into a tattoo shop and you say, I got this idea. It's burning in my brain, right? You got this crazy ass, and you know, it's like flames up my arm. And so you go to the shitty tattoo man and he's like, he puts flames up your arm, right? And so you gave him the business logic. The logic was flames up your arm. Now the flames, you didn't describe them well. And so they kind of look basic and hard lined, you know, and it wasn't in your mind in the end, it's a shitty vibe, right? And so our
Yeah, it
job
just
with
doesn't feel
you
good. Yeah.
is to be an opinionated tattoo artist, right? Not the kind of guy you go into and say, hey, here's this picture I found in a book somewhere or on your wall somewhere and translate that because that's pretty trashy. And also, it's not unique at all. Us, I think of us more as a boutique that has real creative people here, right? Like we come into the situation and I'm opinionated enough that if you trust me enough and you have your kind of idea and we understand, and you need to understand that you're not giving me a full idea, right? You're not. And let's just be honest. And so, do you trust me enough to make a beautiful picture in the end? And if you do, let's like reiterate a few times. AI is going to allow this. We're going to have some good learnings, some bad learnings. We're going to be able to ingest, regest, vibe, unvibe. And I think that's our lane right here, right? At Black Flag, is that we're willing to work with you to shape this dream that you're having. You don't have a specific idea. And for the ones that do, I mean, their projects go even so much faster. Like when we came with, who was that? Totem AI, Angela. They had an idea. They could describe it. They went and put in some work. They bought a psychiatrist, psychologist, something, and then they had an algorithm kind of created that we interpreted, and the project was over pretty quickly. But there's bigger ideas, and there's bigger ideas,
But
right?
the
And
business
so,
logic was clear, right? It was
right.
like the
But if we're the
defined
boutique,
approach,
you'll
defined.
never tell the artist, you'll never go in there and tell a real artist how to draw the picture, right? You'll always say, here's what I want. Like if you want a mural on the side of your wall, unless you have the stencil, the template, you're gonna get something custom.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what we
well,
call
I
it.
would also argue that, like, I mean, Nelson, Eli, you just tell me to shut up. But like, to me, this is the role of what design was in my head. But it's, to me, it's like that intermingles so much with product managers at other companies. Like, there was always a person whose job it was at the end of the day to like interpret what we were doing, unless the company was like, and this is a very rare situation that I was in college where I launched a question and answer website for college students. And I was a college student and I was like, I know how to build products. No, I just knew the problem they were having because I was fucking half man and I was a college
Yeah.
student too. Right.
I
And so
think
to me, like, there's that interpretation aspect that kind of doesn't go away of what the user wants. And domain experts are, you hear that word so much around AI because it's like the fastest hack to just like having a person in the room that knows if it's good or not.
To
yeah.
simulate the domain
Yeah.
expert. Yeah.
Right.
No, this
Yeah.
Well,
this aligns 100% with traditional design steps or the design phase, right?
For sure.
You
Yeah.
talk to the customer who's funding the project, and it's like, okay, what's the business problem? Tell me about, right? You get all that thing, and then that needs to be translated into, right? This is why having other experts at the table helps, because now immediately a developer or an engineer hears it from the horse's mouth, but then with the assistance of an intermediary like a designer can say, oh no, this translates into these kind of features, versus the developer's immediate interpretation, oh, I can build it this way, right? So it's like that trifecta of technology capabilities, business needs, and design have to, like, right? That, I think one of my favorite UX diagrams has that. By UX is that when here's our tools and our vehicles, we're gonna design it with the business needs and customer needs in mind.
Well, like, I think it's it's an obvious conclusion when you're presented with the question of like, what responsibilities would you give agents or AI to make? And when I think about the responsibilities like coding, math, and even just think programming logic in general, certain systems design, like there's scenarios where we're offloading a lot of trust and responsibility to the AI to make good decisions about architecture, design, but it also, you're like, they're writing 99.9% of our code these days.
Yeah. So
Right?
I was going to say that this kind of goes back. I just wanted to finish my Schrodinger's cat analogy. That's really relevant to what you're saying, which is like, this is where I've kind of landed on vibe coding, which is like, when you vibe code, people are calling it agentic engineering because if you're an engineer, you're going to do it differently than somebody that's just like, I want an app. Like, at the end of the day, those are two different processes. There's someone that's like pushing towards an end result they're imagining with no idea what's happening, and then there's people who are tinkering along the way. No matter what you say or do, that's what this is. Like, we're tinkering with it to make sure it does certain things in reliable ways. But like, at the end of the day, like when you finish one of these projects like this, right? I would say this is a little less finished than I would normally present it in, but like, when you finish this, you'll be asked, is it ready? Is it ready to go to production? Right. And I think of this now as like the Schrodinger's cat analogy, because you guys, the Schrodinger's cat is like where the cat's in a box and you don't know if it's alive or dead, but it all depends on if you look. Right. I don't mean that from a mystery standpoint. It's not a mystery to me what I have to do to get this thing into production. I've been trying to get this thing ready for production all along. And it's like two streams of work where it's like, I mean, reiterating on the whole app is something that I could do, or I could get this thing ready to go to production. And for a long time, we've kind of thought of those as like two separate, trajectories. But the whole point of the template is that if we can have consistent decisions that we make on those architectures, we know what's wrong. We know what it did, right? And so if we can not be like thrown those surprises, we narrow that gap between like, well, I know it's ready for production. Let's just see if the cat's alive, meaning you like it.
Yeah, it's a wicked problem. No, I think it is a really wicked problem of like how do you simultaneously enforce standardization and sort of optimization in the building and sort of the creative process or the generative process while also leaving room for the flexibility and the unique circumstances of every business at the
Yeah,
same time. And I think that's a great like that is the gap that we're navigating with the ideas and we should book a third one of these guys. I do have to run and it's going to make us
the
close
only thing I would say
this
with
session,
precast
but
is just that you have to have you have to have a deadline now. Like if you don't have a deadline, you've already made your decision on if the cat's dead or not. You're gonna just iterate on it forever.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Time
I
box
didn't
it.
share that skill, but I can give it to you later on, man. But just before you run is AI interprets time wrong based on its training data, right? It'll if you say how long will it take us to build this, it'll say 3 months, right? And so I made a skill that doesn't just encompass that, but more. And I want to share it because that the way that it responds will try to talk you out of what you want to do, right? Because it's based on human and
People,
it
yep.
doesn't know how fast it is. It doesn't know how vast it is. It doesn't know how much knowledge it really has until you steer it like that. So I got this skill that I made myself that I'll kind of share with you, but it's not to be used willy-nilly, right? It's just like you need to use that when you want to use that. But it's the idea is to unlock its brain. It's called scale shift. It makes the AI aware that we're not under those same rules anymore of time constraints. I don't want to be telling the customer it's 6 months when it's like 2 days. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you didn't
Yeah,
it's
dude. I don't think I've solved this, but I have just a single line in my like my rules file that I have and everything that just says you live in a universe where time doesn't exist going forward, only backwards. And that has somewhat worked, but like that's I ended up writing
Yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, these things are weird, and we can talk about it next time. I looked at the calendar, booked us for next Tuesday to kind of check in on where the supermarket app is. Maybe we can Keith. I'm happy to help loop something there to push it along too. We can try to like record one more. I'd like to wrap up a longer demo of this, and then we
Yes,
could
and then
cut this together, get it
my
on
desire would
YouTube.
be to do another one before I leave, even if it's just us again, to continue to practice this because we can get this where it's very good in 24.
Yeah, let's do Bobby's. Gosh, what's it called? Crowd Talk.
But yeah,
fast.
we could. Yeah,
Yeah, Cast World.
Man, I'm still thinking like, do we go design first or do we let this thing try to crank it
No,
out
we should.
or drive this fucking thing? Then let it
I
drive
was
me.
just Yeah, I was just thinking we should get together and just like fill out a business model canvas and value proposition canvas for it and see if that makes like how could you bring that context into your project? Does it make it better? Does it make it easier? You know, does I don't it'd just be fun content to record.
Well, I kind of have the problem with a template being that it's already picked things for me that I may not want or
I
it may
know,
not.
but we're gonna have to do it. Like I need you to be a PNA about what's in it because we're all gonna have to align. Like, right. That's the goal. Yeah. It's like it's like Flubber. You know, you guys remember that movie? Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I mean, I'll take a
Guys,
look.
I got a bill. I think it's gonna kick us all out. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
sorry I gotta
Yeah.
run, but I've gotta All right, let's try to
Tuesday.
catch up on this on Tuesday, guys. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks.
Awesome. So here we are a few days later, coming back. Keith, you want to just kind of give us an update? Like, just, you were just mentioning it's a little scattered, but like, yeah, how has prototyping the supermarket initiative been going, or what's it been like?
Yeah, so I think that it's been going very well in terms of I've got the site. What I've ended up launching is we've got a pretty standardized process now where we can go and get product, right, that works for different types of users, and then we could get a cut of a video, which is something I've got a cut of a video we should look at that was entirely made using AI, could be edited by real videographers, and then I've got a presentation that I can give, and that's just kind of like an overview of the idea. Now, I've generated this a couple times, but these are things that we're able to generate very quickly, like on the fly, almost. Well, not yet, but almost, unless we're going to sit there and watch it. So now, what I ended up doing here is I am starting to use the platform as like my essentially like space for the project where I store things like all the Claude designs you guys did, etc. Are all I'm trying to store in the platform and use that as like my central thing when I spin up the new idea to pull all those ideas in. The biggest struggle I had is I couldn't find the Riverside transcript last night. It was already rolling, so it wasn't a huge deal. But we need a process to get that like synced up.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I had downloaded it and sent it somewhere in Slack, so definitely
Yeah,
haphazard,
I got the
you
first
know.
one. I couldn't find the second one. I didn't look that hard. It was already moving, but to me, it's like that's often where I start my process. So maybe that's not the move, but I do think that it is the move in some sense. Like the base that we start from dictates where we end up, right? And so I think that with this particular idea, we would have been better served and still could be if I had started from like Nelson's documents that he originally did, which I don't think I incorporated either. I could have done a better job of that. And I think that if we just have all of our documents in the same place, which shouldn't require a major mental lift from anybody. The way I see it right now is that we just have either files that we've created, right? We've either created a Claude design or somewhere that's like an outright prototype. And if we have some variation of all three of those or any of those, we need to include them in like the initial build so that the AI goes through each one of them and like considers that perspective in building it. Because I think what I would say about this entirely, and I should have been sharing it the whole time, is that it probably reflects too much of how I'm perceiving the project and not how the team is perceiving the project. Although it's not bad. It's not like it's not terrible.
So it's more about synchronizing our
Yeah,
well,
exactly. Like
documents.
if it has access to the context, right, it'll do a better job. And most importantly, if it gets it close to something that we want on the first cut, it's going to be a lot easier to do it as opposed to trying to edit now. Like even most of the errors you end up seeing in this, like you see how it's got like the screenshot behind it instead of this. It's like I changed the title and it messed it up. And so it's like little things that you change like can stack up if they're not given the same level of QA by the AI that's trying to do it. Anyway, I know
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
dumb, but it's just like that's where my
Well,
nitpick is.
yeah, if you've kind of fast forwarded to the end, right? You're already like reflecting on the experience. So now, like, let's just back up and kind of, yeah, walk us through. I mean, we started this last week at this point, right? We're about a few days, a couple of different AI sessions in. So just walk us through, like, what did you make? Where have you gotten to? And then we can reflect some more on like what could be better or what could be worse. But just what is it at this point?
Yeah, no problem. So I think that at this point, right, we have this idea of just like a centralized store, right? And the idea is to combine like the three different like audiences that we had talked about, right? To try to like create a community growing idea. And
Mhm.
so the three things here is that, and I don't have these aren't the three users. The three users are we've got community, we'll call them community organizers for lack of a better term. So that could even be anywhere from a church to like a nonprofit that's very well funded, et cetera, that helps with hunger issues in the area, right? The second one is going to be the public itself, right? So it's got like actually value to the public, right? People that come in there and say like people that know their community store and know which stores are better than other stores. And then the third group is the stores themselves, which, obviously are incentivized to try to create solutions to these types of problems, but not necessarily in and of themselves. So this makes like, am I making sense, Nelson? At least what I'm saying is maybe not this chart. And so I think that we very much built around what I very much built like this around is like a scorecard for the store, right? That combines these like the opinions of these different places and tries to combine like local food, like local nonprofits and government resources with the actual public facing like neighborhood truth, if you will, and then allows the store to use that information to do a bunch of things.
So we're solving like the shared problem, right? Is the nutrition deserts or the food deserts that certain neighborhood stores experience because of the razor thin margins.
Yes, exactly. And I think that the idea here too is that, with either funding help from the community to help like solve I don't know if this is a proper term, but like the gap between people that can afford food that actually helps them or that actually feeds them versus like what they need beyond that, like who covers that gap. And I think that's kind of the idea, right? Is that the stores probably there's lots of things that could cause them to do that that they might not know about or they might not see, right? Like the store might be understaffed, etc. And now I'm just kind of rambling. But the app itself is basically a very similar design to what it was last time. So so we have like just a full scorecard here um, about what's going on at the actual place. So it has so for this place, South Market Grocery, it references things like a refrigeration replacement. So this was like an example I had used of like things that could be going on at the store that could slow it down and make it not very good. And here it's got ability to trace like a refrigeration replacement. Maybe this is too much of a feature, but just kind of like a live like what's going on at the store. This is probably a little bit too bad. This would be a big deal if the refrigeration was out. And that's the kind of thing that would show like, hey, this is going on now. That's super incredibly useful for you to know. Because a lot of those stores, they're just not. I don't know if you've been to stores in food desert. They're not maintained near as well as they should be, and that is like often like a huge problem. Is they just are out of sell.
Mhm.
So in terms of like strong community, like this, you got to remember this is being written not by the store. It's an AI aggregate of all the information it has about the store. So as we learn more about the store, each one of these would be different per store that's viewed by the public. But here it's like you can see that their operations are like a 72. Like this is out of 100, so it's not super great, right? But it kind of shows how if you compared the trip success to or like the operations or the fresh access to other ones, you could see how this would be significantly more useful. But then, yeah, it said this one said this is identified that in this store, like neighborhood partnership is already an asset, so they already have a significant amount of neighborhood partnerships, and I think that is important to call out if they don't have any neighborhood partnerships or they don't have anything like that for the ecosystem. That makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then here, I think that this is probably an example of it being a little too literal, but I wanted it to identify funding opportunities, even like publicly here on the scorecard, and it opens up like a brief for what that could look like. That's probably not necessary, but the idea here is that it matches the different ideas or the different organizations with stores that they can actually immediately help.
Yeah, and also I just want to say in the background, I was able to like navigate to the page. I authenticated, signed in. I was able to load the same demo of South Market Grocery. So it is working here on my side too, which was a big part of what we got like stuck on last time. Was something was going on with the deployment, or there was some 500 error or something. So very cool, very cool. I'm curious, like, are those real? Or are they stubbed out? Like, did you use like a web search to grab some of these like healthy food financing initiatives? Or like, are those just placeholder? Do you know?
I do know they're placeholder. I think we should consider them placeholder. I told it to pick something like from the USDA, so the USDA one might be real. If I had to bet my life,
Mhm.
there's probably not a Florida financing food initiative. There probably should be. That'd be my 10 cents. So I don't know if those exist, but if they are real, the goal is that these would be real, like real ones. It's a mock
It
only
is
in
a
the
real
sense.
program. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mock only in the sense that I put it in there, right? That's in the database itself. This is not like a static app. Like this actually is.
Well, it looks like it was a thing until 2024, and then DeSantis shut it down. So
Kyle told you. I should
yeah,
have bet
unsurprising.
my life. This happens.
But I'm sure we can find other examples, right, with a little bit more deeper research to queue up,
Well, yeah,
like,
because the main reason that I would like to do deeper research is if we chose specific communities, we could do like targeted releases of this, and I would choose. I have a preference towards like local things like this. That's just me. I truly believe that people that are local, that all solutions to this should be funded as local as possible.
yeah.
But dear God, not at the expense of other programs. We're recording this when I say that.
Yeah, so it looks like, right, if we think of what we have here, there's places or stores where, you know, any of the 3 user types we talked about can check in and grade, across these dimensions. Was it neighborhood, friendliness, stocking, nutritional value, right? So you can kind of like put the store not on blast, but instead it's like the see something, say something mentality, right? Like help the store self reflect whoever's filling it out. And then that helps you match to funding opportunities, right? So based on the score, over time, might say, hey, this store is doing well, but it's consistently not ready for open. It's, understocked or something. That connects to funding options. So tell me a little bit more about the library and the community. And then I want to try something out with you guys before we run out of time. So what's going on the files and the community side? What did these look like?
This is a solution that I'm not in love with. So sometimes the AI, it'll take a little bit too literally what I say. And so in this case, I wanted the store to be able to like upload proof of what's going on from their side, right? This is going to be a little bit of my own bias, but I felt the inclination that the store would have trouble like or would try to change things if they were getting a bad rating. And so in my mind, the idea here was that, and this is definitely a little bit too of a privacy violation for them, but they could upload things like, here's my refrigeration quote. It's going to be fixed this week. And the AI can look at it and say, oh, yeah, it is, and send it and add it. And so that's where the refrigeration quote came from.
That's
Maybe,
cool.
maybe
Yeah.
that's a little too literal of example. I could have made this less about the proof itself and more about what the thing is actually doing, which is
No, if you
prove to your
score it,
customers that these things are happening. Yeah.
right, yeah, you score it low and you're like, damn, the refrigerator's out again. If the AI has this information, the community can know, oh, this is scheduled to get fixed by Tuesday, right? We're going to get the tomatoes back, or we're going to, or whatever
Yeah,
the
exactly.
right,
Well, it also
you know.
gives the store a chance to like contribute and respond, right? Because in theory, the store could post up these scores themselves. Like I guarantee you that the store maintains some level of these numbers, even the ones we've created here. But I don't know what it means to them, and they're going to come out as good if they present it, ever, right? Because
Well, I
most of
think the important part of this is like the deltas that would emerge when you put the audiences side by side on the same store. If the community is consistently lowering it, then like the self evaluation, or the city grades it lower than, the other two, right? I think there's something about the deltas between the
yeah.
two that actually
Well, I'm
tell you
also
way more.
biased towards like in my mind, I haven't lived in Texas in a while, but like, man, when you go to HEB versus in any other grocery store, even in any neighborhood, it's like completely differently maintained, right? And so I
Mhm.
think in my head,
Mhm.
I was a little biased towards like what makes HEB like that much better, and it's just their responsiveness and honestly the fact that they staff a lot more people than other companies or than other like. I mean, when you go to a Kroger, I mean, you're lucky if you even find a staff member. That's not like that's
Yeah.
even at the
I
Yeah.
mean,
checkout.
it's worth noting the factors of where HEB comes from, right? It's Texas based. Texas is like a self-sufficient state in terms of a lot of
Yeah, well,
its,
I think it's that. Plus, I know it's their relentless focus on each HEB store is unique in a way that
yeah.
they can't, that Kroger just can't do at the size they're at.
Well,
That's at
and
least the HEB.
also it is a sort of pullback to company values too, right? Like to Nelson's point, it's like HEB was funding all of the youth camps in Texas. They were giving back to the community way before they were running ads about it. I mean,
I'll
decades
just straight up say that
before,
Texas, man, when there's a disaster, you'll see an HEB truck before you see a FEMA truck. We're just
Yep.
crazy on
Yeah.
numerous levels.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, that's really, and that's the type of stuff that I don't think really would get captured in this, but is like the true brand differentiator, right? So, I'm curious about the community one, like on that tab, if you can speak to like what's going on that front.
Yeah, I can.
Cool.
I know it's here. So
It's like
the idea here is that the idea here is that there's like context that the store can share about what they're looking for. So if they're looking for like, we're looking for a partner to send our it's not expired is not the right word because this food's not expired when you send it to the food bank, but we're looking for food banks that can take this food, right? Or we're looking for somebody that can do. I mean, I guess if it's like a low,
we're
if it's
hiring,
yeah,
but
we're hiring. I was like,
like
I was gonna say we're looking. I think I was thinking more like we're looking for someone who can fix a refrigerator, or we're looking
I
for.
see. Yeah, so library is like files that the store can use to contextualize its scores, right? And maybe give feedback back to the community. And
Yes, the
also
difference here is
the
private and
community
public. Yeah,
page is like that this is the public context that like if I come in and add a note that's like this is underway, just want to make sure that the AI is going to relay this or something of the sort. Like
yeah,
at least
definitely.
that's what
So,
it appears. Yeah.
well, I
Can you
could say
add a
what.
note?
Yeah, I could say what the two things are. So, like, you
Yeah,
can have
cool.
like public or store only like context related to the neighborhood, but the idea here is it's things that the store wants from the community,
Cool.
right? And so the idea here is that this kind of like all this stuff comes from the things that they would enter here, right? And the AI would read it and create the report.
Very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, and then the biggest thing that if I could underscore is that in terms of like effort this took, this wasn't my number one priority, but in terms of time, this is what I would expect from our team or teams in the future in like 24 hours. If we did this and iterated on this is a great place to start. And that the next iteration of it, could it is a real working product in and of itself. But it's like if it took us a month to get here, this would be an unacceptable result. If it took us a day of not even full effort, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so Nelson, I think we've never really given you a chance to like introduce yourself, I would say, but can you speak to Talos days and your background? Seeing what you've seen here, right? Knowing it's a full stack web app, can serve 3 customer types. Just like spitball for me, you know, if you would have charged a development team to do this, what kind of you get what I'm asking? Like, what does this make you think of when you transport yourself back to 2020 or
Yeah, like
2015 when we met, you know?
the process of getting here, right? It's to get to this level would have taken months, right? To
Months.
produce something like that. Because you had
Preamble,
the
forming a team,
sketches, the design, translating designs into building the back end and putting it all together, presenting it to clients. And and the thing that I think remains consistent is the alignment and understanding of the problem and the problem sets, right? So you have, Keith, you mentioned the 3 different entities, right? The end customer, the shopper, the store owner, you have the government entity as well, and you have community, right? Or the nonprofits or the food banks. And so something like this where it's multi-user or multi-market would have to be clearly segmented every step of the way. So as soon as you come to the dashboard, like, okay, it should be clear, who is this for? Is this for the store owner, and what is their job? What is their purpose, and all these things? Uh, the purpose in their goal overall, and in understanding what that goal is, and in the short term. Uh, yeah, I think it comes down to we have we have something to show, but we still have to come back and confirm that does this match the mental models or the needs of these individual entities, right? Does it match them individually? And then are we solving the problem at the whole picture?
I totally agree
Yeah,
with all of that. My main feedback is just like throughout all of this, I was like, we could have done this from the beginning, like talked about each of the users and like what we wanted to
That's
deliver for each of them, and I would have nailed it.
yeah. Well,
And so that's kind of like where my head's at, is like that initial context. It's like to the point where if I could do this in 24 hours, it's not even worth me going back to you figuring this out until the next day.
well,
Right.
what you're saying there is perfect because this is the stuff we would have found out 3 months in. Like, hey, client's waiting for stuff, and like, yeah, we'll have it in a few more weeks. We're iterating and building, shipping stuff every couple weeks, and
yeah,
and then now the bigwig, the stakeholders, they see something like this, and then we get to see if where's there a misalignment, where's the shortcomings, and so it's the same issue, but now we get to see that issue of alignment and understanding across teams a lot sooner, right? We see this in one day, which is great, versus 90 days from now.
yep,
Now we can say, okay, let's take a step back, redefine, reaffirm that we're aligned on the problem space, and who are these players involved, and what is their customer journeys or their experiences along the way. So to your point, Keith, yeah, you're right. Where's the starting point is at the beginning with, here's the problem, we all agree and understand. Okay, we move on to the next step as to figuring out, well, what is going to be the best solution, is if it's a platform like this, and if it's going to solve that for the individuals.
yep. I think this is a good reminder of how we should approach what we're doing with Agora internally. Some of these upcoming weeks, we should make sure we're focused on things like what are the users, what are the workflows, documenting the ideas. But we always have to remember there's like a fine line between staying in that space too long versus jumping into the prototype. So, like, what's interesting is it's all still the same dynamics, right? It's still
Hmm.
all the same things we've been navigating for decades now. But I think this kind of comes back to the point that was made earlier when we started, that it would have been good for us to like align up front and make sure we're all in sync. And I I have a hunch, or I think what we're going to see as the model capabilities continue to improve, right? We're going to get another big Anthropic drop before the end of the year. Probably get another big Gemini drop before the end of the year. OpenAI maybe. We're going to see another step change around November, December once more. And so assuming, right, the models just keep getting better and better, my biggest question right now is, do we need to align? Like like I'm so used to having to convene a large group, build alignment, document an outcome, communicate that. You know what I mean? Like it takes the ongoing maintenance of like keeping everybody aligned over a long period of time, where I think you have to go to the other side of the paradigm, which is a solo engineer can do amazing things by themselves.
Hmm.
Amazing things now. And I think actually, it's that quote, right? I think we even joked about it with like Jake Taylor from Jump Cloud. It's he who goes alone goes the fastest. I think it's like a Napoleon quote or something.
No, exactly. But I would also like to say out that it's like, like Napoleon, you don't have to do it on your own. And that it's often like just a misalignment between like how people are using AI. Like, I feel like everybody's just trying to use AI to get their work done faster, as opposed to like trying to actually do something that's going to create a better process, like something that can create that alignment through the process itself of like iterating on these prototypes. Like this prototype is like, it's not just a design. It's not just a designer someone mocked up. And I would expect that to take weeks to a month for a designer to mock something like this up at all. But this is like an actual full-fledged app, right? And even if we were to say, fuck this thing, it's a waste of time, we could take it and build a different version where it goes through the old version, takes the parts we like or don't like. And if we had 5 of those, we could do that. Right. And if that's the viability, then if you're sitting around talking and having a conversation about this for 2 weeks before you even put anything on the screen, then it's not going to work. Like it's not using AI to the most effective way possible. And like while we're on this
Mhm.
topic, just the biggest thing that's been like making me frustrated, or like that I think is a big misconception, that I see how people got here, and I feel like they're just kind of, you got to keep moving forward with AI to get past this. But like everybody says, like the person who's creating the work is like, the work is now on the person reviewing the work. I don't know if you guys seen that quote, like where people are like, it puts the onus on the person reviewing the work, and I think that that is stupid. Honestly, it's just wrong. Like to say that is like, if the person is doing the wrong work to the point where you won't even review it, why are you having them do the work at all? And why are you like review, why, if your job isn't to review the prototype or to review this and it's more work, then you either need to be using AI to review it, which I know has its own problems, sure. But if it's too much work, then your team isn't equipped to work in that process. And if again, if like some junior engineer is whipping out crap that sucks, if they were doing it with their hands, you would tell them how to fix it. You wouldn't tell them that they're not doing it right, or that they're putting the work on you. What kind of
Yeah,
leadership?
you wouldn't just write
What
them
kind of
off.
leadership is that?
Yeah.
That's not leadership. That's being fucking lazy. Like it's
Mhm.
like, you have, if they're sending you too much, if they're not doing this right, don't be like, hey, let's fall back to the old process. You're moving too fast for me. Like that just doesn't work. That being said, I think it's a very real reaction to the speed of AI. Like when you get a bunch of AI for the first time, and if your thought process is, I have to treat this exactly like I treated work I got that someone took 4 months on, then it's a different conversation. Then it's not this. It's just not. You're not there yet, right? And I don't know. I've seen that a lot. That quote where people are like, oh, like people are just generating garbage. And like, I don't know who's paying a bunch of kids to generate garbage, but apparently there's people doing that. And so that's kind of where my head's at, is just like, if we're able to redefine this process and, meet with the team the next day and say, this is what it looks like. What do you think? And they've clicked through it and they give us feedback, we can move and iterate much faster to build that alignment than ever.
Yeah, I think though there's like, of course, a spectrum of maturity here, right? Or there's tiers of maturity that teams move through that I think is important to mention. Which I think you can stop your screen share, Keith, if you want. I think this is great work, by the way. But like, we all had that moment where we were thrown a piece of work that was generated with AI that we wrote off, right? We said, they didn't spend enough time thinking about that. They're just, they gave me this messy document. There's a lot of errors, and that was a hard moment to deal with for quite some time, right? Because nobody was really respecting the work or giving the right attention to the right things in the work. And we had this messy period of spelunking and wayfinding where we went too far, we backed off. And I think we're getting to a point now where we're generating AI content in ways that there's like norms around, we've kind of self-formed ways that it's healthy for us to use it on massive amounts of content. Like for example, Bobby on our team, right? Like anytime he generates something, he always gives me like a 1-page companion doc because he knows my time is limited. Right. And then I can like interrogate deeper if I need to, or if I need to go beyond that first level. And I think strategies like that are just a little bit of that, like, yes, and rather than the no, but mentality. Right. So if you were to just cut it off and say, look, guys, like, we can't consume all of this content, we have to stop and go back to the way that it was, I think our story would have been way different over the past 8 months. And instead, we've just found ways to like navigate it. But we're even then now moving into another stage of maturity where our agents are reading each other's agents' content. And we're even operating at like another higher layer of abstraction, oftentimes watching sub agents work or communicate. And that's where I don't think, I don't know, teams are gonna have a long road to get there. If you know what I mean? If they have their old process, their old workflow, it's going to be so difficult to to get everybody up to the same
Yeah, well, I think
level,
it's not so much like the problem with the old workflow is like, it's like authority as well. Like you could like, if someone thinks of themselves as an authority in a certain part of the loop, right? Like, oh, you got to ask me here, you got to ask me here, you got to ask me here, and this, like, to get this thing done, you've got to have like 3 touch points with me. Like, you may just need one touch point, right? Like, you need to figure out what that looks like and then provide the context to your team to actually build what you want, right? Because the AI is going to try to fill in and figure out context, as we've seen today in the examples, right? And so, like, if you don't provide it the context it needs, like, we've just done this enough that we've seen like a lot of the prototypes come out and be like, oh, we just didn't talk about the three
That
user
part.
roles.
Yeah.
Like, we
Yeah.
just didn't talk about this part. And if you're not able to look at it and say that, then it's all a big mystery. And it's not so much decoding the mystery as much as it is like, what is the gap here? And all I could really say is I found myself doing that after 3 months building technology in any other place in the past.
Yep.
Be like 3 months
Yeah, I want
later.
to invite Yeah, I want to invite Nelson to share his thoughts, and then let's do kind of a wrap up statement. And I'm just curious, like, what would we do different next time? Or yeah, where do you want to go, Nelson?
Yeah. So two parts to that. The way you mentioned about authority reminds me of knowledge, shared knowledge of the problem, or like the collective knowledge, right? The what is it? The old saying of the elephant, right? Everybody touches different parts of the elephant, and that's the magic of the design sprint, right? That process of we got multidisciplinary experts, including decision makers and stakeholders at the table talking about it from different angles and immediately saying, wait, what about this? Have we considered that? And so all that's happening in real time in a very structured process that produces buy-in, inherent buy-in along the way, because we're all seeing the same thing more or less at the same time with a prototype that we all agree on. Whether it works or not, that's a different story, and, in terms of adoption and validity, validation. But that's what I think about when you say authority, because when one individual or one expert, let's say a designer or a developer, is off doing their thing, that's the same issues tend to happen. Whereas whatever comes back in the reviews phase, there's a disconnect or disalign. Oh, like, well, this is not exactly what I imagined. And so for whatever reason, right? There's no not necessarily right or wrong answer. So coming back to it's that design thinking process of, well, what is the problem? And I think, I mean, Eli, since your experience in working in with Austin and these type of subjects, you're probably the closest to understanding the problem space around fulfilling supermarket and the food chain. And so coming back to that initial starting point, what is the problem for our customers or the consumers, the shoppers, and the problem for the store owners? Getting specific, right? You have a local consumer who's of a certain profile, experience a particular type of, let's say it's affordability or accessing the right nutritious foods. And then you have the local store, right? Let's get more specific. Maybe it is a small chain or part of a bigger chain, or it's just that individual shops, which you see less and less. So if that's who we're who's coming to us or who we're trying to address issues for, then I think that's where the starting point needs to be, and then we're all on the same page. From that, the AI, the agents are going to follow our same mapping of the breakdown of the problem and the hypothesis of what the solution should be.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how we come back to the core or the start, right? Process mapping, workflows, user persona, like it's all the core tools are still so relevant. I love that. Keith, what about you? Any closing thoughts before we wrap up? How is this for you, or what would we do next time?
So, sorry,
You go.
can I quickly? How much time do we have? Do we have?
I've just got to run to a call here in a couple minutes, but I'm not trying to cut us short. All
Okay.
good.
No, because I had the customer segments breakdown in terms of empathy
Yeah,
maps.
pull that up because that was going to be my point anyway. So you
Okay.
got, yeah.
So that's after last week's conversation. That's what I wanted to have that a little bit more robustly broken down. Granted, a lot of the copy
Mhm.
here, I think, could be tweaked and vetted against, or research, but if we look at this, let's skip the business model and let's just go to customer segments. So we have the different types. So you have a store operator, a city official, a community organization, and a resident shopper, right? So what is their problem, right? They're held accountable for trust and access, affordability, cleanliness, neighborhood perception. So identifying that, what is their experience using tools that we are familiar with, such as empathy mapping. What's the experience in and around what their problem space? So by vetting all this across the board and making sure that we're addressing individual entities or individual user groups and seeing that as also as a whole, we're going to reach that alignment to say, okay, let's pull the trigger and invest in building the prototype. And to a point, the thing that we're experiencing today is that speed and the ability to build has been, well, made a lot more available to us. Speed is almost a commodity at this point because we can build something within a couple days.
Yep.
And so the onus on let's make sure we're building the right thing is becomes increases, right? We spend more time clarifying and making sure that we're gonna build the right thing.
Yep. And the only thing I would say is that, I think that my overall takeaway from all of this is that the time that we spend together to talk about this and to get aligned is the most expensive part of creating any of this shit now. And it's not
Yep.
even fucking close. That the time that
Yep.
we're all three getting paid to be on a call is the most expensive part of the project, not even by a minute, just by a lot. Like that the time that I'm spending building this out is important, but it's not the cost center. The cost center is, I think, at least from my perspective, how can we come in better prepared in those meetings in an intentional way to discuss all of the different things that we know define that. Exactly like this, Nelson. This is exactly what I was thinking. Right?
Yeah, because if we can take this artifact and then, have the AI just loop to the goal of like aligning to it, it'll get better over time. Yeah, we could revisit this every week after just a couple of just runs, looking at this, adding features or removing features that might have, kind of compounded, and we get much farther. So this is really, really great, guys. I think what we're showing is just how, or if I had to like kind of give people one takeaway to offer, it's that it's the classic story of slow down to speed up.
Mm,
Like sit down, write the business model, write the value proposition, write your goals down, express yourself on paper with or without the help of AI. And whether it's this framework or another framework, all of that information about the intent of the creation makes the generative aspects of AI better, more accurate, more consistent, higher quality, and pays you back in dividends right over the lifetime,
yeah,
of the
measure twice,
project. So
measure twice.
yeah, measure twice, cut once is still very true. Although we can actually cut 10,000 times, it's just wasteful and excessive. You just don't want to waste your time doing it. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for this. I'm gonna follow up with you, and I'll share the cut over after the kind of groups of recordings. And I think we should try this again, like whether it's with the same idea or do another loop on something like Bobby's ideas. It's been really fun. And thank you guys for the time. I'm excited to keep working with you.